It is Chuck and Anj as we get you ready for another high school football weekend with one of our social media previews. And let's go up into the state of Michigan, where Niles has a tough game in the Wolverine Conference coming up on Friday night. They visit 2-2 Sturgis. But Scott Shaw's Vikings are having a prolific season on offense. They have scored more than 50 points in 3 games already this season. No Niles team has ever done that in a season.
The only game they did not is the one we're showing you highlights of, Lakeshore, the game we broadcasted a couple of weeks ago. But outside of that, they played really well. Brawley, obviously an outstanding quarterback. They run that triple option, something Scott Shaw had never done before he got to Niles, but it has really worked out. But they'll air it out on occasion as well.
And that defense, you just saw that interception. Nobody really talks about their defense, but they're only giving up 8 points per game. They're going to have to handle a pretty potent Sturgis offense. Dalton Tisdale is a great running back for them. Really a load to bring down. He had 4 touchdowns in their win over Plainwell last week. Tanner Patrick doing a nice job at quarterback. I'm concerned for Sturgis about their defense. They have given up 114 points in 4 games.
Oh, that's going to probably be the difference maker in this one. That might give Niles the edge in terms of getting the victory, because Sturgis' defense against that triple option offense, not liking Sturgis' chances in that situation.
Niles has to get a win so that they can stay in that Wolverine Conference race. Don't forget, they've got Edwardsburg coming up in a couple of weeks on TV 46. There is an intriguing matchup in the NIC Big School Division. St. Joe 3-2 goes over to Ricefield, and Elkart takes on the Lions, who are 1-4. We saw Robinson St. Louis's team last week against Penn. They can play defense. They got those 2 big defensive ends in Marion Dye and Tamari Morris, and I really like them.
The problem is the offense has not been able to score any points in 3 games. You know, they've been shut out the last 2 games. Defensively, they've done very well. They didn't give up a point against Penn until the 3rd quarter against a very good Kingsman squad. They just have to get that offense going, led by Quinn Ross at quarterback.
Meanwhile, St. Joe nearly pulled off a big upset last week, losing to New Prairie 29-26. Alex Ortiz had a great week throwing the football, 20 of 29, 255 yards. And in my opinion, Anj, they've got a playmaker in Hayden Miller, who was one of the better ones in the NIC this year.
He's really grown over the years, and that connection between Ortiz and Miller has been there for 3 seasons now. He plays both sides of the ball. Ortiz is a 4-year starting quarterback. That combination gives them a lot of experience in Ben Downey's 2nd season, 2nd stint, and you can see the level of play rising at St. Joe under Coach Downey.
Big question in this game to me. Can Elkart get its running game going? Because the artists formerly known as the Indians have had problems stopping the runs at times this year.
Well, it's going to be a key factor. Can Elkart get anything going offensively? They'll score points this week. I don't think St. Joe is going to get them in a shutout routine, but it's going to be interesting to see how this one develops and whether or not St. Joe can score on Elkart against that very good Elkart defense as well.
The only NIC game that has 2 teams with winning records going against each other is the renewal of an old and soon-to-be new Northern State Conference rivalry, and that has John Glenn going to Breeman at Don Bungie Field. And, of course, John Barron's squad smacked around by Knox last week. You know the Baron of Walkerton will have his team's attention this week at practice.
No question. When you get in bounce-back mode, John Barron is as good of a coach as anyone in the area in terms of rallying the troops, and they'll need to do that here against Breeman. But, you know, Glenn's got the pieces offensively to make it happen. Of course, we know Chase Miller, Tyron Larkin. They have the combination to be able to get things going offensively, and that's what they're going to need, because I think you're going to have to score points to win this game.
I like a matchup in this game. You got Chase Miller from Glenn. He is 7th in the state in interceptions, and you've got Tyrus Graverson from Breeman, who is #1 in the state in receiving yards. Maybe a little peek at what we have Saturday night with Notre Dame and Ohio State. But what you do have in Breeman is a team that's 3-2, and I still think trying to figure out what Breeman team is this. Is it the team that played the punishing defense against LaVille? We know that Silas Leydig can throw it, but at times they've been bullied by other teams.
They have, and last week they lost to Jimtown by 11, and they gave up a significant amount of points in 35. So they'll have to have the defense playing well in this one, and they'll have to score some points to be able to beat Glenn. I think they have the pieces to do so. It's just whether or not it all comes together in a squad that has grown up over the last 2 seasons.
But you look at common opponents, there's one that stands out. Glenn beat Jimtown. Breeman lost to Jimtown. We'll see which teams show up on Friday night. In the Hoosier North Conference, there are 2 games this week that bear watching. And one of them that not a lot of people are talking about is Triton at Pioneer. Now, the Trojans are 3-2. Zach Whitaker's doing a really nice job in his first year, especially because they haven't had Cole Shively for every game. He's back now at quarterback, and he's got some weapons around him like Dante Workman, who he really went to last week.
When you have a quarterback like Cole Shively, who's one of the better ones in the area, and you're at a small school like Triton, when you don't have him for a couple games, that makes a difference, especially in the level of competition they've played. They've played some really tough games. They've played well in those really tough matchups as well. Triton's a really good football team for the size of their school.
And a couple of sophomores, Vincent Prater and Colton Reynolds, have helped make a difference for the Trojans. Pioneer starting to get the swagger back down there in Royal Center. Adam Barry's team playing a little bit better. They're healthier now than they were at the beginning of the year.
Do they have a Jack Kaiser?
They don't have a Jack Kaiser, but they do have a Tyler Zellers on defense who is really good. And offensively, you got guys like Rylan Toloza, who's been dynamite. He's run for almost 700 yards already. And a lot of help from Micah Rands in that wing T attack.
Pioneer reminds me of Breeman from last year, a team that was very young to start the year, and as the year was going on, was getting much better and started to put together some wins. And I think this Pioneer team is a lot different than the Pioneer team from week 1 or week 2, and that makes it a much more difficult opponent for Triton here, as opposed to if they played them a few weeks ago.
And if Pioneer gets caught looking ahead to Knox next week, Triton can come into Royal Center and do some damage. The huge game in the Hoosier North Conference, though, is Knox and LaVille. Two teams that are 5-0 coming in, so obviously both unbeaten in the conference. LaVille has played one more conference game. And oh, by the way, as Russ Radke is trying to get to 400 wins, and he's at 393, he would have a couple more right now, except he lost by 1 to LaVille last year, and he lost by 1 to LaVille in 2021, and you got to think that gnaws at him.
I can't imagine there is more motivation for Russ Radke in 47 years as a head coach for a regular season matchup than the fact that he lost to that team in the previous 2 years by a combined 2 points. So I would think that he's got to have his team ready to go, to say the least. And then when you look at LaVille, then on the other side, it's kind of crazy that they've had no drop-off despite having a coaching change. Jeff Kaiser's done a great job.
Well, you've got two pretty good defenses here, too. Knox has only given up about 14 points a game, and that guy, Jeff Kaiser, who was the defensive coordinator at LaVille, his squad only given up about 10 points a game. They've got good running back in Cody Allen that Knox is going to have to pay attention to, but I think that young man, number 9, Lucas Plummer, could be a difference maker in this one.
And might not be just at quarterback, could be in terms of the special teams, because he's got a great leg. We saw that in week 1 as well against Breeman and what his capabilities are there. It could be another tight game. It's been the last 2 years, so why wouldn't this be a potentially 1-point game as well? And maybe Plummer comes through, as you like to mention, coming up on the drive to the game Friday night at 6 on Pulse FM. That could be the difference maker. You can hear our pick coming up Friday in that show.
Yeah, so make sure you tune in to the Tire Rack drive to the game Friday night at 6 on Pulse FM. And then our 46th game of the week comes to you from Steele Stadium. The Northern Lakes Conference clash between Warsaw and Mishawaka for first place in the NLC. I had the privilege of going down to Lake City this week, talking with Bart Curtis, and when he wasn't giving me the usual food reviews, he called this game phone booth boxing. You can see a little bit of phone booth boxing right here. He said this is what it's going to be like between the tackles Friday night.
Did you confirm whether or not Bart's the one that figured out what phone booth boxing is, or someone presented this to him?
I'm pretty sure he gets this on satellite TV. He's watching this live from Russia, I'm pretty sure. But this is a really good example of what it is like between the tackles for these two teams that run the same offense. For Warsaw this year, though, the amount of adversity that they've been able to overcome in this season is rather incredible. You're going to see a young man in these highlights, Drew Sullivan, that was the quarterback last year, was supposed to be the starting quarterback this year, got injured on about the 8th play of the game, and they've had to go with a sophomore, Quentin Brock, who's done a nice job.
And they've also lost 2 offensive linemen as well. So they've been built on the defense. They've been backed by the defense. But now that offense starting to come together. They scored 45 points last week against Northwood. This is a really good Warsaw team that if you can find ways to get victories in games like that early on in the year when you're facing that adversity, that helps you down the road, and they're going to need that against a very good Mishawaka team that's kind of like a mirror image of that.
Well, they got a really good fullback at Warsaw by the name of Reed Zollinger, 312 yards last week against Northwood. He gets some help from Aiden Williamson and Chase Carl up front. I do like that defense, though. Isaac Beam has 7 sacks. You got guys like Mason Gabbridge back there and Jet Woodward. But you know what? They got their hands full with this bunch from Mishawaka because Keith Kinder's team, they can bring the load, including that young man, Brady Fisher, 6'3", 220 pounds, running the show at quarterback.
He's been excellent the last couple of years. He wants to be able to win this matchup as well. The defense has really picked up its game, led by Jackson Snyder, 57 tackles. He's been excellent all season long. And if one team's going to throw the ball, it would probably be Mishawaka. I don't expect to see much throwing in this game. It might be over in about 28 minutes. But if someone's going to throw the ball, it would probably be the Cavemen. That's the wrinkle they have that Warsaw maybe does not.
Yeah, Fisher has thrown 7 touchdown passes this year. He's 20 of 30 throwing the football. This just has such deliciousness in it. You got these two coaches who really love and respect one another. You've got two teams that are just tough, hard-nosed competitors. Can't think of a better way to spend your Friday night or Saturday morning. Friday night at 11, Saturday morning at 9. Bo will join us as well. We can't wait to bring it to you. It's Warsaw and Mishawaka, our 46th game of the week, and that does it for our social media preview.